I stood at the front of the classroom, surveying the sea of expectant faces, my partners flanking me like specters of incompetence, as I finished my exhaustive presentation on madness in 1800 Scotland. The air was thick with tension, heavy with the weight of unspoken questions as I paused, letting the silence drag on, my eyes locked on my partners, willing them to speak, to salvage what was left of their dignity. But to understand how we arrived at this moment of truth, we need to take a step back, to a time when the world seemed full of possibilities, and the horrors of group projects were still a distant hum on the horizon. I was a university student, majoring in literature, with a schedule packed to the brim with classes that explored the depths of human emotion and the complexities of the human experience. One of those classes was entitled Madness in Classic Literature, a course that delved into the darkest recesses of the human psyche and the ways in which literature reflected and refracted those depths. The professor was a firecracker, a whirlwind of energy and enthusiasm, who brought the subject to life with his zany antics and his infectious passion. The topics were fascinating, a journey through the twisted landscapes of the human mind, and I was hooked from the very start. As the semester wore on, the inevitable group project assignment loomed on the horizon, like a specter of doom, casting a long shadow over our carefree days. We were divided into groups of 3 and tasked with creating a 30-minute presentation on madness in any era of literature. I was paired with 2 partners who seemed studious and dedicated at first glance. One of them, a girl with a passion for 1800 Scotland, was emphatically invested in doing our project on that topic. She was persuasive, and we were convinced, swept up in her enthusiasm, like leaves on a windswept autumn day. But when we approached the professor with our proposal, he seemed hesitant, his expression a mixture of concern and warning. He winced, like a man who had bitten into something sour, and asked us if we were sure, if we were prepared to delve into the relatively uncharted territory of 1800s Scottish literature. The girl was adamant, convinced that we could make it work, and the professor, though skeptical, agreed to let us proceed, offering to help us find sources and guide us through the treacherous waters of academic research. We ended up with a project that focused on Lord Byron and a dry, mind-numbing text that seemed to stretch on forever, like a desolate landscape without end. The text was a labyrinthine exploration of the human condition, a maze of words and ideas that seemed to shift and twist like a living thing. But as we delved deeper into the project, it became painfully apparent that my partners were not pulling their weight, that they were content to coast, while I did the heavy lifting. They didn't even bother to read the material, not even the relatively short Lord Byron poem, leaving me to struggle, like a shipwrecked sailor, clinging to the wreckage of our project. I was furious, my anger burning like a fire, consuming me, body, and soul. I felt like I was being taken advantage of, like I was shouldering the burden, while my partners reaped the benefits. But I was determined to see it through, to create something worthy, something that would make our professor proud. So I dove in, headfirst, like a diver into the abyss, and did the entire project myself, including the required handouts that we were supposed to print out for the class to follow along with our presentation. As I worked, my resentment grew, like a cancer, eating away at my insides. I didn't want to be that student who rats out their partners, but I also didn't want them to get away scot-free, to reap the rewards while I did all the work. So I decided to get petty, to take matters into my own hands, to create a sense of justice, no matter how small. I memorized everything, every detail, every nuance, every twist and turn. I wrote down bullet points that revealed nothing, that were as useless as my partner's contributions. I was prepared, like a warrior armed for battle, ready to take on the world. The day of the presentation arrived, like a dawn, breaking over the horizon. I met my partners in class and gave them the worksheets, watching as they scanned them, their faces a mixture of relief and confusion. They had no idea, no clue, what was about to hit them, like a storm, crashing down on their heads. We stood up, in front of the class, like actors, on a stage, and I began to speak, my words flowing, like a river, as I talked about madness in 1800 Scotland, from memory. My partners nodded, silently, like statues, their faces frozen, in a mixture of fear and awe. The Q&A portion of the presentation was like a minefield, a treacherous landscape full of hidden dangers and unseen pitfalls. I picked a student who asked a question about the religious aspects of the dry text, and I paused, like a conductor, holding his breath, waiting for the music to begin. I gave my partners a chance to answer, to redeem themselves, but they were silent, like ghosts, their faces pale and drawn. I let the silence drag on, like a slow-motion train wreck, watching as my partners squirmed like fish on a hook. It was a moment of pure, unadulterated triumph, like a sunrise breaking over the horizon. I had done it. I had pulled it off. I had created something out of nothing, like a magician conjuring a rabbit out of a hat. My partners were exposed like a pair of charlatans, their incompetence laid bare like a naked truth. They had failed to deliver, to contribute, to participate, and now they were paying the price. As the presentation came to a close, I felt a sense of vindication, like a warrior who has won a great battle. I had fought for my rights, for my dignity, and I had emerged victorious, like a phoenix rising from the ashes. My partners, on the other hand, were left to pick up the pieces, to try and salvage what was left of their reputation. So, was I the jerk for doing what I did? Was I wrong to take matters into my own hands? Or was I justified in my actions like a hero who has fought for what is right? The answer is not a simple one like a multiple-choice question with a clear and obvious answer. It is complex like a maze, with twists and turns and hidden dangers lurking around every corner. But one thing is certain: I will never forget the lesson I learned that day, like a scar that will remain with me forever. Was I right to cut my partners down to size, to expose their incompetence like a surgeon who has removed a cancer? Drop your verdict below.
If you made it this far, thank you for watching. Drop your verdict in the comments below, subscribe for new stories every single day, and hit the notification bell so you never miss one.